You know that person who seems to have it all figured out, sharp, successful, always has the answer. But if you look closer, there's something else. A heaviness, a distance, like they're carrying weight no one else can see. They overthink every decision. They struggle to find people who truly understand them. They set impossible standards for themselves and everyone around them. And when you ask if they're okay, they say they're fine. Because how do you explain struggles that come from thinking too much, feeling too deeply, seeing too clearly? Here's what most people don't understand. High intelligence doesn't make life easier. It makes it different. And that difference comes with specific struggles that most people simply never experience. Or maybe you're the one who faces these struggles, 8 of them. And by struggle number 5, you'll understand exactly why being exceptionally smart can feel more isolating than empowering. So, let's begin. And this first struggle? It's the one that looks like indecision from the outside, but it has nothing to do with indecision. Struggle 1. You overthink everything. Most people weigh a few factors and decide. Should I take this job? Give it a day. Pick one. But someone with very high intelligence sees the immediate career implications, the long-term trajectory, the opportunity costs of every other path not taken, the assumptions embedded in the role, the probability of different outcomes, and whether they're even asking the right question, all before breakfast. This is called decision paralysis through overanalysis, and research on cognitive complexity confirms it. Highly intelligent individuals process significantly more variables when making decisions. Not because they're indecisive, because their brains automatically generate more scenarios to consider. Choosing a restaurant becomes a 20-minute internal debate. Sending a text requires reading it 5 times. Making weekend plans involves evaluating logistics, energy levels, social dynamics, and whether this is actually the best use of limited free time. People say, "You're overthinking it, just pick one." But they can't just pick one. They see too many implications to ignore. And the worst part? Even after all that analysis, after finally deciding, they second-guess the choice, because they can always see how a different decision might have been better. Most people think and move on. They think, decide, and then start thinking about the decision they just made. That cycle never fully stops. But overthinking decisions is only part of it. The harder struggle isn't with choices, it's with people. Because thinking at this depth makes genuine connection feel almost impossible to find. Struggle 2. Struggling to connect with people. They're in a conversation, someone is explaining something, and within seconds, they've already understood it, seen the implications, noticed the flaws, and moved 3 steps beyond where the conversation is. But they can't say that, so they wait, they nod, they pretend they're still processing. And this happens in nearly every interaction. The constant experience of being ahead of the conversation, while pretending not to be. This is intellectual isolation. Research shows it's one of the most consistent struggles reported by people with IQs above 130. Every conversation requires translation. Every social interaction requires slowing down. Every relationship requires operating at partial capacity just to maintain connection. They try to connect authentically. They share what they're actually thinking, and they see confusion, or worse, people assuming they're showing off. So they learn to edit themselves, to simplify, to hide the depth of what they're thinking. And the loneliness of that, constantly hiding how your mind actually works just to fit in, is profound. They want connection, but connection requires being seen. And being truly seen requires someone who can understand how they actually think. Those people exist, but they're rare. Finding them is like searching for a specific person in a city of millions without knowing their name. So they settle for surface-level relationships, or they choose solitude, because at least alone, they don't have to pretend. And it's not just the loneliness of being misunderstood by others. There's another weight they carry, one that was placed on them long before they had any say in it. Struggle 3. Pressure to always succeed. When you're identified as the smart one early in life, that label becomes both an identity and a prison. Parents expect excellence, teachers expect top performance, colleagues expect brilliance, and they expect it of themselves. But here's what nobody talks about. Being smart doesn't make success automatic. It just makes failure more visible. When someone with average intelligence struggles, people think, that's normal, learning is hard. When someone highly intelligent struggles, people think, what's wrong with them? They're supposed to be smart. This is the weight of unrealistic expectations. And research shows it's a leading driver of anxiety and perfectionism in gifted individuals. Every project becomes high stakes. Every mistake feels like proof they're not as smart as people thought. Every setback feels like personal failure rather than normal difficulty. They can't just be good at something. They have to be exceptional, because anything less feels like falling short of who they're supposed to be. And when they do fail, which everyone does, they don't just feel disappointed. They feel like frauds, like they've been exposed. The pressure to always succeed doesn't motivate them. It paralyzes them, because the fear of failure becomes so intense that sometimes not trying feels safer than trying and falling short. But the pressure doesn't only come from what's expected of them. It also comes from what they expect of everyone else. And that creates a different kind of exhaustion entirely. Struggle 4. Expecting too much from others. They explain something once, clearly, logically. They expect understanding. When they have to explain it 3 more times, the frustration is hard to hide. Someone makes a decision without considering obvious implications. They can't understand how that's possible. A colleague repeats the same mistake. They think, how can you not see the pattern? This isn't arrogance. It's a genuine inability to understand why things that seem obvious to them aren't obvious to everyone else. This is called the cognitive empathy gap. Highly intelligent people struggle to model how differently average intelligence processes information because it's so far from their own experience. Research confirms it. Very smart people often underestimate how difficult tasks are for others, not from lack of care, but from an inability to accurately simulate a different kind of cognitive processing. And so, relationships become painful. They seem impatient, critical, like nothing is ever good enough. But from their perspective, they're just expecting basic competence, basic logic, basic attention to detail. The problem is, their basic is most people's exceptional. This creates a cycle they can't escape. They expect too much. People disappoint them. They feel guilty for being judgmental. They lower expectations, get disappointed again. They want to accept people as they are, but their brains can't stop seeing how things could be better, clearer, more logical. And that gap, between how they think things should be and how they actually are, creates a constant, low-level frustration that never quite goes away. And underneath all of it, the overthinking, the isolation, the pressure, the expectations, there's one struggle that cuts deeper than all the rest. Struggle 5. Feeling deeply misunderstood. Not just intellectually, though that's part of it, but fundamentally, at the level of how they experience the world. They try to explain what they're thinking. It comes out wrong, or too complex, or people misinterpret it as arrogance. They try to connect emotionally, but their emotions are tangled with analysis, and people think they're being cold or detached. They try to just be themselves, but themselves involves depth and complexity that makes people uncomfortable, so they feel perpetually misunderstood, like they're speaking a language nobody else speaks. This is existential isolation, and research on giftedness consistently identifies it as one of the most painful aspects of high intelligence. You go through life knowing that most people will never fully understand how your mind works, that even close relationships will have this fundamental gap. You can explain your thoughts, but you can't explain what it's like to be you, to have your brain constantly making connections, seeing patterns, generating implications faster than you can articulate them. People see the surface, smart, capable, together. They don't see the internal experience, the constant processing, the weight of seeing everything so clearly. So they learn to present simplified versions of themselves, to hide the full depth, to be understood partially rather than misunderstood completely. But that means living with the knowledge that nobody knows the real them, the full them. And that is one of the heaviest burdens intelligence can carry. And that inability to ever feel fully seen, it feeds directly into this next struggle, one that traps them in a cycle of achievement that never feels like enough. Struggle 6. Perfectionism and self-doubt. Here's the cruel paradox. Their intelligence shows them exactly how far they are from perfect, which makes them feel like failures. Even when they're excelling, they complete a project. Everyone else thinks it's great, but they see every flaw, every place it could have been better, every shortcut they took. So they can't feel proud. They feel inadequate. They achieve something significant. Others celebrate, but they're already thinking about what they didn't achieve. what they should have done better. The bar is always higher than their current position. Success never feels like success, because they can always see the next level they haven't reached. This is high-functioning perfectionism, combined with acute self-awareness, and research shows it's incredibly common in gifted individuals. And underneath the perfectionism sits something even harder: deep self-doubt. Because when you can see all your own flaws with perfect clarity, it's hard to believe you're actually good at anything. They think, if I can see these mistakes so easily, everyone else must see them too. They just don't say it. So praise feels hollow, success feels lucky, and every achievement comes wrapped in the fear that next time, they won't be able to pull it off. They're never satisfied, never fully confident, always pushing toward a standard they can see, but never quite reach. And that constant internal scrutiny, that inability to just accept, doesn't stop at themselves. It extends to everything around them, every claim, every assumption, every answer that everyone else just accepts. Struggle 7. Questioning everything. Someone states a fact. Their brain immediately asks, how do we know that? What's the source? What assumptions underlie it? An authority makes a claim. They think, what's their incentive? What aren't they saying? Why this framing? A tradition is explained as how we've always done it. They think, but why? Does it still make sense? This is compulsive critical thinking. Research on intellectual autonomy shows that highly intelligent individuals have significantly lower deference to authority and tradition, not from rebelliousness, from a genuine need to understand rather than just accept. They can't just believe something because someone said it. They need to understand the reasoning, examine the evidence, consider alternatives. This makes them seem difficult, contrarian, like they're always challenging things unnecessarily. But from their perspective, they're just trying to understand truth. And truth requires questioning. The exhaustion comes from the fact that it never stops. Their brains don't have an accept button. Everything goes through analysis. No answer is just an answer. It's a starting point for more questions. Nothing is simple. Everything is provisional. Everything requires their brain to stay engaged. And sometimes, they desperately wish they could just accept something, anything, without thinking it all the way through. But perhaps the most invisible struggle of all isn't about thinking, it's about feeling. And for highly intelligent people, feeling isn't something that happens quietly. Struggle 8. Emotional weight of empathy. They don't just understand what people are feeling, they feel it, deeply, and they can't turn it off. Someone is struggling. They feel that struggle as if it's their own. Someone is in pain. They carry that pain. Someone is anxious. They absorb that anxiety. This is called affective empathy, and research shows it's significantly higher in intellectually gifted individuals than in the general population. They walk into a room and immediately feel the emotional temperature, tension, sadness, frustration. Even when nobody says a word, they have a conversation. They're not just hearing words, they're feeling the emotions underneath, the unspoken pain, the hidden anxiety, the things no one said out loud, and they can't ignore it. Their brains won't let them. This makes them extraordinary friends, partners, colleagues. They truly understand. They genuinely care. But it also means they're constantly carrying other people's emotions alongside their own. Someone shares a problem. They don't just sympathize, they actually feel it. And now they're carrying that weight too. Multiply that across every relationship, every interaction, every person they encounter, and you see the burden. People say, don't take things so personally, let it go. But they can't, because their empathy isn't a choice, it's automatic. It's how their brains process human connection. And the weight of feeling everything, from everyone, all the time, that is one of the heaviest things intelligence can ask a person to carry. 8 struggles. And not one of them is a weakness. These aren't signs that something is wrong with them. These are the natural consequences of thinking differently. In a world designed for average cognition, the world will tell them they're overthinking, being difficult, expecting too much, feeling too much. But these struggles are real, they're valid, and understanding them doesn't make them disappear, but it does make them make sense. Because intelligence isn't the simple blessing people assume it is. It's complex. And with that complexity comes both extraordinary capability and genuine, invisible difficulty. Which struggle resonated most with you? Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 8. If this video helped you understand these struggles, whether you experience them yourself, or you're trying to understand someone who does, share it with someone who might need to see it. They may never have had words for what they carry. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.